Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Global Woman Peace Foundation's Change Her Story, Learn and Lead Education Initiative. Today, you will be learning about a topic called female genital mutilation. This topic can be sensitive and potentially bring up many emotions. During this lesson, we will treat each other with mutual respect and kindness. This lesson is not intended to slander or diminish different cultures and traditional practices, but rather to educate about bodily autonomy, individual rights, and to broaden your understanding of the world and ongoing issues of importance. If you have any further questions, concerns, or need to discuss things privately, you can contact faculty members, guidance counselors, school psychologists, school nurses, or administrators. We encourage you to think critically and create intelligent, culturally sensitive, and respectful conversations inside and outside the classroom. Any behavior that does not align with these expectations will not be tolerated. Today's presentation consists of 4 parts. The 4 parts include an anatomy review, an overview of what GMC is, what your rights are, and case studies. To start off, we are going to learn about female versus male anatomy. We are going to start by talking about female external genitalia. The female external genitalia is called the vulva and consists of 4 parts. The 4 parts of the vulva include the vagina, the urethra, the labia, and the clitoris. The vagina is one of the 3 holes of the female genitals. The vagina connects the uterus to the outside of the body. The vagina is where a girl experiences menstruation and childbirth from. The urethra is the 2nd hole of the female genitals and is much smaller than the vagina. The urethra connects the bladder to the outside. This is where a girl urinates from. The labia is the skin folds on either side of the vagina. There are 2 parts to the labia. The labia majora, which is the outermost folds of the vagina, and the labia minora, which is the innermost folds of the vagina. The clitoris is a small bundle of nerves located at the top of the vulva. The clitoris is known as the pleasure spot. It is important to note that no 2 vulvas look the same. Each girl's vulva looks different, and this is totally normal. Although, if you are concerned that your vulva does not look or feel normal, you should talk to your doctor. Next, we are going to discuss female internal organs. Female internal organs include the uterus, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, the cervix, and the vagina. The uterus is a hollow, pear-shaped organ located in a woman's pelvic region. The uterus is where a baby grows. The fallopian tubes are located on either side of the uterus, connecting the ovaries to the uterus. The ovaries are 2 circular organs on either side of the fallopian tubes. The ovaries are where eggs are stored. The ovaries are responsible for producing the female sex hormones estrogen and progesterone. The cervix is located at the bottom of the uterus. The cervix connects the uterus and the vagina. The cervix expands and contracts to allow fluids such as menstrual blood to leave the body. The vagina is both an internal and external female organ. The vagina is the part of the body where intercourse occurs and where things exit the body such as menstrual blood and a baby. Now we are going to discuss male external anatomy. The external male genitalia consists of the penis, the testes, and the scrotum. The penis is the male external reproductive organ. The penis is made up of the shaft, which is the long part of the penis, and the glans, which is the tip of the penis. The testes are 2 sacs located on the outside of the body, below the penis. The testes are responsible for sperm production and production of the male reproductive hormone, testosterone. The scrotum is the skin that encases the testicles. The scrotum protects the testicles and aids in temperature regulation of the testes. Next, we are going to discuss the male internal anatomy. Male internal anatomy includes the prostate, the vas deferens, and the urethra. The vas deferens are tubes inside the body that connect the testes to the urethra for sperm to be excreted. There are two vas deferens in the male reproductive system, one connected to each testicle. The prostate is a walnut-shaped organ located under the bladder. The prostate produces fluid involved in sperm production and aids in the nourishment of semen. The urethra is a tube located inside the penis where urine and semen exits the body. The urethra connects the bladder and the ejaculatory ducts to the outside. Every part of the human body, including the private parts, has an important function. Now that your memory has been refreshed on male versus female anatomy, think about what would happen if any of a person's private parts were removed. What would happen if someone decided to remove parts of the male genitalia for no medical reason? What would happen if any part of the vulva was removed for no medical reason? Removing a body part sounds painful and scary, doesn't it? Did you know that this is something that actually happens in the United States and around the world every day? This practice is called FGMC. What is FGMC? FGMC stands for female genital mutilation/cutting. According to the World Health Organization, FGMC is defined as all procedures that involve partial or total removal of the external female genitalia, or other injury to the female genital organs, for no medical reason. Before we continue, it is important to discuss the differences in terminology you may hear. Terminology that is correct to use is female genital mutilation/cutting, and cutting. Although these three terms are okay, there are differences in when and why each term is used. Female genital mutilation is most often used by activists and those that speak out against the procedure. However, it neglects to consider the traditional basis for the procedure and can be considered an offensive term. Female genital mutilation/cutting is the most correct term for our purposes. FGMC refers to both the human rights violation using the word mutilation as well as including sensitivity to those that practice the tradition by including cutting. Cutting is the term most commonly used by communities that perform the procedure. People within these communities often find the procedure being called mutilation offensive. For our purposes, we consider the use of female circumcision an incorrect term. Female circumcision has the connotation of this procedure being equivalent to male circumcision. Male circumcision is done out of medical necessity to protect against STIs and cancer. FGMC is not medically necessary. Female circumcision fails to take into account the long-term physical and psychological traumas associated with the procedure. You will likely hear the procedure referred to as female circumcision in resources on the topic, although we will only be using the term FGMC. There are 4 types of FGMC. Each type of FGMC is different, but some types cause more physical trauma than the others. All forms of FGMC is abuse and has lasting physical and psychological impacts. Type 1 FGMC is the clitoridectomy. Clitoridectomy is defined as the partial or total removal of the clitoris. Type 2 FGMC is excision. Excision involves the partial or total removal of the clitoris and the labia minora. Excision may or may not involve removal of the labia majora. Type 3 FGMC is called infibulation. Infibulation is the sealing of the vaginal opening by cutting the labia minora and/or labia majora and stitching together the skin, only leaving a small hole for urination and menstruation. Infibulation may or may not include partial or total removal of the clitoris. Type 4 FGMC is defined as all other procedures that harm the vulva, including but not limited to burning, pricking, and piercing. At least 230 million women and girls living today have experienced FGMC globally. 513 million girls will be cut or are at risk of being cut in the United States each year. Each year, 3 million girls are at risk of FGMC around the world, with the highest prevalence being in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. 90% of girls will be cut between infancy and 15 years old. The reasons given for why a family chooses to have their daughters cut are for cleanliness, marriageability, virginity, purity, religion, social acceptance, and as a coming-of-age ceremony. These reasons are all excuses for the real reason FGMC occurs. The real reason FGMC occurs is to control a woman's body and her sexuality. Think about why someone would want to control a woman's body in this way. Why is this not the case for men? How do you think FGMC impacts a child's physical and emotional well-being? FGMC in all forms is illegal in the United States, including vacation cutting. Performing or assisting in the performance of FGMC in any form is punishable by fines and jail time. Vacation cutting is when a family takes their daughter out of the United States, usually to the parent's country of origin, to have their daughter mutilated. It often takes weeks for a girl to fully heal from the FGMC procedure. Therefore, vacation cutting usually occurs during summer vacation or other breaks from school. We are going to play a game called Myth versus Fact. Listen to the statements and answer to yourself if you think it is a myth or a fact. Is the following statement a myth or a fact? FGMC is religion-based. That is a myth. The truth is, FGMC is not religion-based and is instead a traditional practice that has no basis in any religious scripture. People of all religions undergo FGMC, including Muslims and Christians alike. Recently, many religious leaders have begun to denounce the practice, stating there is no religious justification. Is the following statement a myth or a fact? FGMC is the same as male circumcision and is performed out of medical necessity. That is a myth. The truth is, although male circumcision has a religious component, it is performed to aid in the health of the male and his future partners by decreasing the risk of urinary tract infections, sexually transmitted infection rates, and penile cancer. Female genital mutilation has absolutely no medical necessity. Is the following statement a myth or a fact? FGMC has no medical necessity and is primarily used to control a woman's bodily autonomy. That is a fact. The truth is, unlike male circumcision, female genital mutilation/cutting has absolutely no medical benefits. It rather causes medical problems a woman would not ordinarily have experienced without the procedure, including difficulty with urination, infection, increased maternal and infant death, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and difficulty getting pregnant. FGMC is used to control a woman's sexuality and is illegal in many parts of the world, including in the United States, where FGMC in any form is considered child abuse and is punishable by both fines and jail time. Is the following statement a myth or a fact? FGMC is a foreign problem and does not occur in the United States or to any girl living in the United States. That is a myth. The truth is, FGMC occurs globally, including in the United States, where approximately 500,000 girls will experience or are at risk of experiencing FGMC. FGMC in the United States happens on U.S. soil and in the form of vacation cutting. FGM/C is performed around the world, including in the U.S., but is most common in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Gender inequality plays a crucial role in the persistence of the practice. This is because, in many cultures, women are seen as objects to serve men, not as equal beings with the same basic human rights. Can you think of other examples where women are not treated as equals? 1 in 3 women around the world will experience some degree of physical or sexual violence. According to the UN, on average, women make 20% less than men worldwide. This is called the gender pay gap. On average, it takes women 4.5 years longer to receive a diagnosis for metabolic disorders. 1/3 of girls in the world's poorest countries have never attended school, and 61% will not continue on to a secondary education. FGMC is a form of gender-based violence. FGMC is a human rights violation. Women's rights are human rights. Part 3 of this presentation will focus on your rights. According to the United Nations, human rights are defined as rights inherent to all human beings, regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights, without discrimination. The first time human rights were formally defined was in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or the UDHR. The UDHR was formalized in 1948 following World War II and the Holocaust. The UDHR is not legally binding but serves as a guide for the establishment of legally binding treaties. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child, or the UNCRC, was adopted by the United Nations in 1989 as a set of rights specific to the needs of children. All people under the age of 18 are considered children and protected by the UNCRC. The UNCRC is the most widely ratified human rights treaty in the world. The UNCRC is legally binding upon a country's ratification. The UNCRC articles that pertain to FGMC include Article 19 and Article 24. Article 19 protects children from all forms of violence. FGMC is an example of violence against women and girls. Article 24 states children have the right to health, water, and environment. Article 24 specifically calls to abolish harmful traditional practices. FGMC is considered a harmful traditional practice. The United States signed the UNCRC in 1995. The United States has not yet ratified the treaty, meaning the U.S. is not legally bound to follow all aspects of the treaty. As of May 2024, the U.S. is the only country in the world that has not ratified this treaty. Although the U.S. has not formally ratified the UNCRC, children in the U.S. still have rights. The U.S. has its own laws, including the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. The U.S. also has laws that specifically protect a child from FGMC. These laws include U.S. Code 116, which protects children from female genital mutilation. This law was passed in 1996. This law was amended in 2021, which further strengthened the law. As of 2023, 41 states have passed their own FGMC laws. Everyone is responsible for fighting FGMC. FGMC is not just a foreign issue. FGMC is not just an issue for girls. FGMC is not impossible to eradicate. However, it is the responsibility of girls and boys alike to fight against FGMC. FGMC happens to girls, but it persists because of traditional gender roles and patriarchal ideals. Together, through education and advocacy, FGMC can be eradicated. For the following part of this presentation, please watch 3 videos.
When I shared the news about expecting our second child, my mother beamed with excitement. Later, a distant relative asked, "Do you think you'll get a boy this time?" An aunt said, "They say if you have bad heartburn and nausea during your second pregnancy, it will surely be a boy." When I revealed that I was having another girl, a family friend said, "Oh, that's okay." I rejected her sympathy. "Oh, don't be sorry. I'm really excited to have 2 girls." After my second daughter was born, I began to enjoy every minute raising 2 beautiful girls. But still, some friends casually asked, "Are you going to try for a boy?" I began bracing myself for this question. I wanted to say, "Don't ask this in front of my girls. I don't have to have a boy to make up for their existence or complete my role as a mother." Sometimes I try to find humor in it. Maybe one day I'll write and publish a manual called "What Not to Say to a Mother of Daughters, Not Sons." I thought that with education and economic opportunities for women, the world had progressed. But too many keep blessing expectant mothers around me with, "I pray you give birth to a beautiful son." Lucky for me and my sister, my parents treated my brother and us equally, in ways not seen in other households. They stressed the importance of education and urged us to pursue our dreams. So when my daughters were young, I went back to school to pursue graduate studies. In one of my classes, I watched documentaries and read papers about violence against women. Although I was not naive, some topics still blew my mind, like female genital cutting. It reminded me of the practice of sex-selective abortions in so many of our communities. How had I not known that both still happen in certain communities in the US? Today, I hope my girls grow to be financially independent and have autonomy over their bodies. But I know my hopes are driven by fear, because women are still underpaid. Domestic violence is still tolerated. Sex-selective abortions and female genital cutting are still supported. Maybe someday, my hopes can come not from praying that they escape so much violence and injustice as women, but from just wanting their heart's desires to come true.
When I was 8, before we left Sierra Leone, my mom decided to join the Bondo Society. I didn't know what they were known for. We were not allowed to talk about it. That day, my mom dropped me and my sister off at my auntie's house and left. I was first to go. They covered my eyes with a scarf. They held my arms and legs in place, and my mom's aunt did it. It was the worst pain I ever felt in my life, and I knew my sister would feel it next. She tried to run and hide after hearing my scream and seeing what was done to me. A month later, there was a party to celebrate. People ate jollof rice and drank Fanta, and we had our pictures taken. We were so happy. We didn't know what FGMC really was or how it would impact our lives. When I reached high school, I learned more. One day, I was with a group of girlfriends at my house, and they were all talking about how someone can give you pleasure down there when they touch a certain part of you. I said, "What? What's that? I don't have that." One of my friends was from Sierra Leone, like me. I told her, "My sister and I went through the cutting." She said, "Oh, I'm sorry." She was kind to me, but I knew then that I was different. When I had my daughter, my husband and I knew she would not be cut, and I started doing research on whether I could get that part back. I looked online, and I found a doctor in Philly and in California who did the reconstructive surgery, but I didn't know how to contact either of them. Then I came across a lady on YouTube who shared about getting the surgery. I contacted her and said, "I'm also a survivor. Something was taken from me that shouldn't have been, and I want it back." She connected me to a group that helped women get the surgery. I had to wait for 3 years, and then I finally had it done. I brought my husband and my babies with me. I was so happy. I was also welcomed by a support group, which gave me a safe space to go and just talk. I felt seen, and I finally found the courage to talk about my story.
I was 18, and I was having my first pap smear. A pap smear is never really something to look forward to, but this was stepping over my boundaries and resurfacing everything I had worked so hard to forget. Hesitant at first, I eased into the vulnerable state, uncomfortable for anyone to be in. Trusting the stranger to examine my deepest, most private parts, reminders of my painful childhood. As she felt around the outside of my vagina, she said, "What is this?" At first, she naively stroked my lesion, but then her touch became invasive. It did not feel like medicine anymore. Her touch paired with the curious tone of her voice that expressed both concern and ignorance sent shivers down my spine. I thought, she now knows. I wondered, will these feelings resurface every time I undress before a doctor? Every time I decide to tell someone I'm getting close to about what happened to me? Every time I share my body with a lover? I have not had a pap smear since. I should not have to face these questions. No woman should.